Hello, and welcome back to Burning Bones, the outward run where I have no armor and can deal only fire damage. In the last episode, I finally got Elemental Discharge, and confidently exclaimed that I would siege Vindavil Fortress. In this episode, I will reap what I sowed and attack Vindavil Fortress, before finally leaving Chersonese for pastures less green. First things first, the walk to Vindavil. Much like a march to war, it was foreboding, long, and extraordinarily boring. The goal is to kill 3 strong enemies, specifically Croc, Balira, and Rospa the Conqueror. One of these is not like the others. Killing them prevents a future attack on Cierzo that would completely wipe it off the map. And after all I did to keep my house, there's no way I'm letting a glorified Team Rocket destroy it. Upon entering the fortress, I take a left and meet Croc. He masquerades as a kind man to make me let down my guard, giving him the opportunity to knock me out and enslave me. Wise to this, I refuse his advances, but he insists on taking me to the fortress's medics by force if he has to. Overconfident from my new skill and rusty from not playing for a while, I take an early hit that nearly made me shit my pants. For those complaining that I don't put my Twitch reactions within these videos, here is how I reacted to that first hit. By the way, volume warning. Oh god. For those wondering, I was, in fact, genuinely terrified there. With this fear placed within me, I played the rest of the fight cautiously, and despite taking another hit, I eventually won. His friends from down the hall realized what happened, so I quickly made my escape before they had a chance to retaliate. I safely take a nap directly outside the heavily guarded bandit fortress before returning to finish the mission. Now rested and ready, I massacre the fortress by setting them on fire and then running away like a cowardly arsonist. I repeat this strategy again for Rospa the Conqueror, and after breaking his and his posse's ankles, he eventually burns to death. With 2 of the 3 bandit leaders prematurely cremated, I move on to the final leader, Balira. Before coming here, I thought Rospa was going to be the hardest one to beat, mostly due to his title, so I felt good going into this fight. Before initiating combat, I set down a sigil of fire and set it alight with a flint and steel. I then run into the room, get their attention, and run away again. With the burning sigil setting her 2 simps on fire, I let them roast to death before facing Balira one-on-one. I have an innate fear of approaching women, and she realized this. She hid behind the various furniture within the room, allowing her to hit me whilst I couldn't counter. To overcome her strategy, I took cover and waited for her to get into a less advantageous position. The spot I chose previously blocked a shot, so I was sure, wait, what? Her attack perfectly cleared the banister and hit me dead on. Whatever the cause of my death, no matter how bullshit, the dice are rolled once more, and somehow I come out on top. Guess I'll just have to add another name to the list of trauma for this run. In my disbelief of the situation, I forgot that your backpack usually spawns near where you wake up when you're defeated. So, believing that it was still outside Balira's room, I ran back into Vindavil for my bedroll and food. I take the elevator up to Balira's room and make sure to keep an eye on the entrance to where I saw her last while I look for the backpack. I then see the most terrifying thing. This confirms the fact that I am actually more afraid of women than I am of death. I then wisen up and look around where I respawned for my backpack. After finding it, I heal up a little before returning to face my fear. She attempted the same strategy as before, but thankfully I was able to lead her out into the open and finish the job. Finally completing everything I needed to do in Chersonese, I looted everything in the fortress and safely carried it back to sell in Cierzo. I returned to the fortress once more to squeeze every ounce of income out of Vindavil before heading to Conflux Mountain. The maze was fraught with more enemies than before, with even a powerful arcane elemental attempting to impede my progress. I successfully evade them though, and eventually reached the Conflux Chamber, completing my narrative arc, specifically ending my business in Chersonese, where my journey began. I also went to sell my stuff and get the cool boon. After learning how to greet fellow cool kids from an ancient mage who literally lives under a rock, I leave the chamber and take the next step in the journey. The destination? Monsoon, where I'll have to travel through the very dangerous Hollowed Marsh. Like, or perhaps unlike its name suggests, the Hollowed Marsh is a disgusting swamp filled with water so poisonous it kills you if you stand in it for too long. Sorta like a Floridian public swimming pool. The place is filled with ash bandits, dinosaurs, and light-based constructs, all intent on killing me. Our goal here is to follow these glowing waypoints to get to the city at the end of the swamp, Monsoon. You'll know it by the giant glowing beam of light. Once there, I'll learn some more useful skills before moving on. But that is, of course, if we get there. Oddly enough, the first trip is always the most difficult expedition in any area. You're typically nowhere near a city to sell, heal, and restock, and simultaneously there are the maximum amount of enemies wandering the area and impeding the path. It's like the game developers wanted to gatekeep exploration. On my way there, I encountered several bandits, but thankfully I was able to stealthily sprint directly past them. Just outside the city, I witness a group of bandits attacking a plant hybrid dinosaur thingy. It tries valiantly to fight back, but it's overpowered, and before it can run away, it's struck down. I feel like this is some complex metaphor for humans destroying nature, where nature is unable to even fight back or escape its destruction. Eventually, I make it to a ferry that takes me to Monsoon. In Monsoon, I use the extra money I got from Chersonese to purchase Mana Ward, Brace, and slow metabolism from the teachers there. Mana Ward prevents all damage for 4 seconds, but my impact resistance takes a huge hit, making me fall over easier than a house of gelatin cards. Needless to say, this effect is situationally useful. However, if I cast Mana Ward in a Sigil of Fire, I activate Immolate, which roasts me alive, but I deal increased fire damage. As we all know, the best way to fight with fire is when you're burning alive. Brace activates a counter that deals no damage and gives me a useless buff, but it immediately halves the attacker's stability and knocks them back a bit. This opens them up for a close-range combo, extremely effective on fast but fragile enemies as it keeps them in place long enough to burst down. In contrast to the other two skills defining how I attack enemies, slow metabolism just makes me need to eat, drink, and sleep less. Useful for saving money and time, but not much else. Emboldened by my new power, I head outside to challenge the nearest enemy. I cross a nearby bridge and encounter a Tyrannosaur. I tickle him with my first attack and he hits back hard. I fear for my life and run for Monsoon. After resting a bit, I head out and see the Tyrannosaur waiting for me, just standing there, menacingly. I set down a Sigil of Fire and cast Fireball on him to set him ablaze. He gets angry and comes after me and I dip again, hoping he would burn while I was away. I go back and see that in fact he did not burn to death and is just directly in my face. I panic roll off the bridge and get stuck in the marsh's poisonous water. To escape death, I begin slowly trudging my way out, gulping down greater life potions like there's no tomorrow. Meanwhile, an edgelord's take on a velociraptor gnaws at my heels. Eventually, I make it to shore, down another potion, and finally silence the Tyrannosaur. I feel like that whole ordeal was some complex metaphor for how nature just sucks. I don't know if this is too soon, but if dinosaurs are like this, that meteor did us a solid. I then spend the next 30 minutes going around the front yard of Monsoon, killing whatever enemies I can before being forced back into the city to either recuperate, sell my overloaded stock, or replenish my stash of oil. After continuing this trend and committing all acts of looting, pillaging, marauding, and murder, I eventually raise almost enough money to buy my next important skill. Eager to reach a new milestone and have a good place to end the episode, I head out with nearly full munitions to unalive the enemies unlucky enough to be nearby. I swiftly finish off 2 stegosaurs before trying to figure out which path to take. Eventually, I decided to see what was on the summit of a nearby hill, someplace I had not yet explored on any of my runs. To my pleasant surprise, a rarity on this run, there were 2 greasy ferns and a gaberry bush up there. Despite the name making it sound like some 80s back alley salesman, the greasy fern is actually a wonderful medicine, the key ingredient in making a greater life potion. Thus, finding these was exceptionally lucky and exceptionally profitable. Eager to return to Monsoon and sell some of my wares for a new skill, I began trotting down the hill to an unpleasant surprise. A marsh archer captain had wandered around and cut me off. blocking my way to Monsoon. I knew I could easily run past him, but the goods he dropped very well could get me enough money to finish my goal, so I steeled myself and prepared for combat. I put down a sigil of fire and create a wall of flames. Then I tried to get his attention with a fireball. He rolls towards me threateningly and gets me good, but is hurt by the wall as well. I run away and drop into an alcove to throw off his AI and use the time to chug down another life potion. I'm able to run past him and get back to the sigil with just enough time left to set up another wall of fire and throw some fireballs. Thankfully, the bandit AI has a very low sense of self-preservation, and as such, he stands in the flames long enough to go down. I loot his body, and despite almost being seen by another woman and her simp, I safely make it back to Monsoon. Now, with more than enough money, I end the episode by getting the breakthrough skill point for Philosopher, Leyline Connection. This allows me to passively regain 1 point of mana every 3 seconds for free forever. It'll greatly improve my ability to output damage in sustained combat. With the extra money, I get the Blessed skill. This gives me the Blessed boon, which is the elemental boon for lightning damage. It'll come in handy as my next destination will be the Spire of Light. Completing this lightning-based dungeon will allow me to raise money for my final skill, as well as unlock a shortcut for the future. But that will, of course, have to wait for the next episode. Thank you for watching all the way through. If you liked the video, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe so you can get an alert when I make the next part. Whether you do or you don't though, I hope you have a good day.